Hey, how's it going? I'm back. If you saw my introduction video, I talked about how I actually did a review on Mystery Science Theater 3000, the movie, and something was wrong with the audio, and that just got completely lost. So, this is a redo. Here is my DVD Blu-ray copy of Mystery Science Theater 3000, the movie. For those who are not familiar with MST3K, it was a show about a man who was held captive on a satellite and forced to watch the worst movies ever made by this evil scientist in an attempt to drive him insane. But the man on the satellite, originally series creator Joel Hodgson, and then later the show's head writer Mike Nelson, they would watch the movies with these two robots, Tom Servo, who was sort of a gumball machine looking robot, and Crow, who looked like a combination between like a bird and some radar kind of robot. And they would riff or heckle or make jokes during the movies, in an attempt to like keep their sanity. And around the early to mid 90s, the people that do Mystery Science Theater 3000, they wanted to do a theatrical film. So they went to several different studios, and they went with Universal and Gramercy. And this was after Joel Hodgson left, so Mike Nelson is actually the host here. The movie that they chose was uh, This Island Earth, which actually was made by Universal, and they were told to do a film that kind of had color, was sort of a typical science fiction film, wasn't too dull, too boring. So they did this film, and uh, how is this film? Well, first of all, let's talk about This Island Earth, the movie that's actually being riffed. Basically, it's about these aliens from a planet called Metaluna. They have these really large foreheads, and they come and they want to gather around the smartest scientists in the world and bring them back to their planet, Metaluna, because they're in a war with another planet, and they want the scientists to create uranium for them. Uh, it's kind of a strange plot, and especially if you're watching the MST3K, the movie version, it's a little difficult to catch all that and notice because there was stuff cut out. I'll get to that later. Um, I remember I first got into MST3K sometime in the late '90s. I was in my teens. I was finishing well, no, I should say preteens, because I think I was still the tail end of elementary school when I discovered MST3K. Uh, so I came across it while channel surfing and I found it on the Sci-Fi Channel, and I just thought it was a really interesting show, a very funny show. It was a funny idea, and was at an old SARS marketplace back then, and I found Mystery Science Theater 3000, the movie, at a rental store. This is years back when there were still video rental stores. I rented it, watched it, and thought it was hilarious. I thought it was a very funny, and it just encouraged me to keep watching the show and looking at more episodes. And at that time, I had only seen episodes from the Sci-Fi Channel era. The show was originally on Comedy Central, and that made me want to track down Comedy Central episodes and watch those, which I did. Uh, this movie is okay. It's um, back then I thought it was hilarious. But here's the one of the things about Mystery Science Theater 3000, the movie. It's good for what it is. It's a piece of MST3K history, but there was a lot of executive meddling that happened behind the scenes. There's even a whole documentary on here about everything that happened. The brains, the people that made the show, they were told to cut out a whole segment. They were told to change the ending and also cut down This Island Earth. So This Island Earth, unfortunately, the plot is a little hard to follow when the film is abbreviated the way that it is. So if you've ever seen MST3K the movie, or if you haven't seen it, I really encourage you to track down an uncut copy of This Island Earth, just the movie itself. Once in a great while, it'll air on Turner Classic Movies or AMC aired it once years ago. I don't know if they really air films from the 50s anymore. Or it might be on DVD, I don't know. But I really suggest you watch This Island Earth first and then watch MST3K the movie, because it's good to know what the plot of This Island Earth is while you're watching the MST3K film, and you can follow the jokes and you don't have to worry about, well, what's going on here in the movie? I don't get this because something was cut out. Um, the normal length of an MST3K episode is about 91 to 93 minutes without commercials, and the movie is only like 74 minutes. And that's, of course, because Universal and Gramercy made them cut the film down. There were focus groups complaining about the film being too long. Focus groups were made up of people that weren't fans of the show and didn't understand it. So that's why the movie is shorter. And that's kind of a handicap there. Most MST3K fans, when they discuss the film, they talk about the short running length, and that really lessens the enjoyability of the film. Yeah, it kind of does. You know, you're just getting into the film, and then suddenly it ends. It doesn't even feel like it's 74 minutes. It actually almost feels like it's only like an hour, that's, which is unfortunate. And even for, mid 90s, that, and even today, that's really unusual for a film to be under 90 minutes. It's so weird. So my, um I mean, I've always been a fan of MST3K, but here's my overall opinion of it. If I'm going to watch MST3K, I'm normally going to pull an episode off the shelf, a regular episode. Shout Factory has all the episodes, not all the episodes, but most of the episodes on DVD, and I have most of the DVDs. So I'm more willing to watch those. I'm more willing to watch an episode like Overdrawn at the Memory Bank, or The Creeping Terror, or The Brain That Wouldn't Die, or Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, or uh, Pod People, and uh, and I'm less likely to play MST3K the movie because I know that it's kind of underwhelming compared to the normal episodes. But there's something that somebody on one of the MST3K discussion boards once said was, the film is actually good for a newcomer. Like, if you want to convert someone to MST3K or introduce them to the show, this is probably your go-to introductory episode. It's short, it's the B movie itself, This Island Earth. It's not necessarily bad, just it. Even if you watch the uncut version, there's little things towards the end that don't make a lot of sense. But it's a B movie. What do you expect? And um, and people they can accept a B movie that's not god awful or terrible or boring. Like, if you're gonna introduce somebody, don't introduce them to like Monster a Go Go or something that's really weird like Manos the Hands of Fate. Go with this one, and they can basically get the whole gist of what the show is about. The first 3 minutes introduce the premise, and we're introduced to the characters basically, and then we go right to the movie. Uh, and I think that, and for those who are newcomers to MST3K, don't necessarily judge the show based on the film, because there's a lot of executive meddling that happened here. They were working with Hollywood studios. With the show, they were mostly independent. They didn't really have anybody from Comedy Central telling them, well, you need to do this, you need to do that. They kind of did that with the Sci-Fi Channel. Unfortunately, Sci-Fi Channel wanted them to make the riffs a little edgier, so there were a lot of more sex jokes and scatological humor, I think, during the Sci-Fi Channel era. Um, and MST3K the movie has some of those. Some people nowadays, they find that kind of humor funny. There's a few jokes in there like that. Uh, there's a and I'm trying to think of some pretty funny jokes I can think of from MST3K without spoiling a little bit of it. I know I can't really do the film or the riffing justice because my delivery is bad. But one joke that always cracks me up is the one where the main character, Cal Meacham, is flying in his jet, and there's a shot of a mountain, and Tom Serval says, "Ah, geez, there's soccer teams stranded all over the place." Sorry, I have to laugh at that because I just think that's a hilarious riff. It's kind of dark, but And there's another one where they're entering the planet Metaluna in the spaceship, and there's smoke everywhere. And I think it's Tom Servo again who says, "Hey, they're landing in Tommy Chong's backyard." And there's a few other ones like where they're in the tubes and they're getting themselves prepared for like the different gravitational differences. And one of the Metalunans is at this panel, and it's this weird colored panel, and it looks like a Simon board game. And one of them says, "Now you're playing Simon." The slogan. And some of them wear these see-through helmets, and of course they have these big foreheads. And Mike Nelson says, those helmets don't really hide their foreheads very well. So there's just these all kinds of funny jokes in there like that. Or earlier in the film where Cal Meacham has to open up these boxes and takes all these parts out. He has to build an interocitor so he can communicate with the aliens. And there's this camera shot where it just shows all the pieces laid out, and it's like this huge mess. And the character Cal Meacham is looking at this clipboard, looking at a checklist, and also possibly instructions on how to put the interocitor together. And Tom Servo says, "But before unpacking, don't." That's that's there's all kinds of great jokes in there like that. For those who have never seen MST3K, I'm just giving you an idea of what the show is like. It's a B movie, and you have these characters making jokes during the film. If you've ever been to a Rocky Horror screening, MST3K is basically like a refined version of that. Because in Rocky Horror screenings, there's 20 people shouting out different jokes, and it's hard to really make out, especially if you're not really familiar with Rocky Horror. It's very hard to keep track and a little overwhelming. With MST3K, it's like one joke at a time. One character does a joke. There might be a few seconds go by. Another person does a joke. There will be something shown on screen, and a character will make a joke about that. But it's all very refined. The characters don't talk over one another. Uh, so, MST3K the movie. Overall, I think if you're a major MST3K fan, you probably know as well as I do that the overall film is not great. And you watch the documentaries on the DVD, and you think they could have done so much more if they had the creative freedom to do so. But if you're a newcomer to MST3K, I do recommend this as like a starting point. Uh, if you want to look at one of the regular episodes first, and if you are curious as to what episodes there would be good introductory episodes for you, Overdrawn at the Memory Bank I think is hilarious. So is Mitchell, which was Joel Hodgson's last episode as host. Uh, if you can track down the two Godzilla films, they're very rare. One of them was put on DVD, but that episode got recalled because they didn't get the correct clearance rights for one of them, and they had to pull that DVD. But I'm sure you can find those episodes on YouTube. Those two episodes are very funny. Pod People is a very funny episode. Wild Rebels is very funny. The Atomic Brain is a very funny episode. The Creeping Terror. I'm trying to think of some other funny episodes. Some of the ones I mentioned, some of them, the movies themselves are crap. I mean, that's the thing you have to keep in mind. This film is about B movies, so don't expect like a gem to show up on MST3K. That's the whole point. The whole point is about someone trying to drive a person insane by making them watch really bad movies, and the test subjects making jokes. That's the whole point. But sometimes people don't like it when the film is outright horrible, like Monster A Go Go, which is uh, itself is hard to follow a little bit. There's a lot of dullness to it, and there's The Castle of Fu Manchu, which a lot of people consider that one of the worst films they ever did. Even the Brains thought that was one of the worst films they ever did. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it's mostly just too slow-paced and very static a lot of the time, with nothing really interesting happening until maybe over halfway through. And Christopher Lee's in it, so if Christopher Lee's in it, how bad could it be, really? Uh, so, but yeah, so MST3K the movie. If you're a fan of the series, you know about the series but have never seen the film. just go into it knowing that it's not as good as a TV show. There's a lot of executive meddling. Keep that in mind. You might enjoy the film. If you've never seen MST3K before and you want a good starting point, check the movie out. Then after that, check into the other episodes. You know, my recommendations are like Overdrawn at the Memory Bank or The Final Sacrifice or Mitchell, things like that. And maybe start with some of the color films first. If you just have an aversion to black and white films, I don't, but a lot of people do, and you want to kind of ease yourself into the oldness of a lot of the films, check with some of the color films first. And also, I think the jokes in those episodes are hilarious. The riffing in those were top notch. The writing was really good, and I would probably pick like the later seasons first. I'm not like one of those people that has a preference over the host. I like both Joel and Mike. I just think most of the really funny episodes were during the Mike era. I think MST3K was one of those shows that just got better and better and better as time went on, as opposed to most shows that get worse as time would go on, or they just drag on, or they get that seasonal rot kind of thing. But those are my opinions on MST3K. So this is my first movie review. I hope to do more in the future. If anybody has any suggestions of what films they'd like me to do these video reviews on, just leave some suggestions in the comments. Also, my website is invaderpet.com, invaderpet.com, and I have a webcomic there called Pet Projects that you can check out. One of these days I might do a live stream where I am watching a film and you guys can like watch it with me and leave comments and we can like make comments and discuss the film, things like that. That's only if I get a big enough fan base here on YouTube and I have enough subscribers and enough people that are going to be aware that I have a stream going on. And everybody who watched this, just have a good day. Thank you for watching, and I hope to do more of these.